Hey you, I'm Andy Powell. Welcome to the Allcast Podcast. No topic is off the table. I hope you enjoy. Alex,
Thanks for having me.
thanks for coming up. I appreciate it.
Not a problem.
Yeah. What was the thing we wanted to talk about earlier? We were talking about transgender stuff, right?
That, and I think you want to talk about the election.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, you asked me if I think there was anything weird about the election. I think that was the way you said it. Yes, dude. I think there's a lot of weird stuff, and I think it's really plain. I think that from what I can see and from reports of people that I see online and social media and stuff, they say that they went to these polling places and the voting machines were messed up. They would only count 1 out of 5 ballots.
Yeah, even my folks, they live in Sun City. They said they were registered and they went to the polling place. They weren't able to register. So they went to a second place.
They weren't able to register?
They said you aren't registered, even though they registered.
Like registered to vote?
Yeah. So they had to fill out some form at the second place. They wouldn't take the ballot. Like they fed it through the ballot machine. It wouldn't accept it. So they said you need to go to a third place. So they ended up going there. And
A third place. So they went to 3 different places?
Yeah.
Okay.
Retired people are pretty committed.
Oh,
They
yeah,
don't-
that's good. Well, that's one thing that's getting lost in the younger generations. If they don't get it on the first try, they're like, oh, screw this. Let's go do something else.
Yeah. So they ended up going to the third place. They were able to submit it. And then after the election, they checked it and their ballot wasn't even accepted.
Yeah. See, so stuff like that's happening all over the place. And if you're having 1 out of 5 ballots counted, that skews the numbers horribly. So, that's one issue as far as like the way that the elections are run. Another issue is that you have Katie Hobbs, who is running for governor, but right now she holds a different position, and that position is in charge of making sure that the elections are good to go. That's a massive conflict of interest. There needs to be a law. I'm not a fan of more laws. I think the more laws we have is not necessarily a good thing, but there needs to be a law that says if you're running the election stuff, you can't run for an office. It's a conflict of interest 100%.
Oh, yeah. There's no doubt about that. I have to wholeheartedly agree. If you have a position, you're trying to run for another position, and if you're already having some sort of influence or have a position where you could influence it, I mean,
Yeah,
it's a problem.
yeah. Yeah, man. So I've seen some people that go to the county, I think it's the county recorder. I don't know exactly which office it is, but I've seen some of these people go to these public meetings and basically say, hey, this is what happened to me on election day. This is what I think about it. And the people that are in charge of approving the election for Maricopa County are sitting there on like a panel. And these citizens are telling them like, oh, you should be ashamed of yourselves and stuff like that. For one, I'm pretty sure that the people sitting on that panel don't give a shit about what the people have to say because they've already made their decision. If they're going to be a part of that level of corruption, then they've already made up their minds that they're choosing themselves over we the people. And that's the type of stuff that, a couple hundred years ago or in a different country, it would get you hung. It would get you killed. Stuff like that. Like, maybe we need to bring some of that stuff back. Have some real consequences for these people that are literally committing treason against our country.
There needs to be more accountability, and I think it needs to be a little bit more black and white. I don't think like public hangings or like beheadings, like
yeah, no, I don't think that
would
stuff,
fly.
but some sort of serious repercussions. I mean, in my eye, I don't know the how the law is written, but in my eyes, what they're doing is treason. They're throwing an election.
And the way the justice system works is a lot of people just get plea deals because they don't want to take it to trial, especially if it's a privately retained attorney. They just want to get it done with, and they don't want to fight them. And that's unfortunately the way that the county and the justice system works right now, is just plea it out versus taking it to trial.
Yeah. And what do they benefit from a plea? Is it just so that there's less traffic through the court system?
Just so they don't have to do more work and have to go to trial. They don't have to call witnesses. They don't have to have an evidence list.
Okay.
They
So,
don't. It's just way more work for them to get a jury panel. Everything
so it's complacency in a way.
more about that, and then they can still count it as a win. They can say, well, they pled out, so we don't have to take it to trial. So
So that counts in their favor
it's
when
still a W in their books.
wow.
So
Wow. Okay.
that's the way.
And you wow.
That's the way the criminal justice system works.
Yeah,
Unfortunately.
and you're a probation officer.
Yes.
And or do you have to go to court at all?
We do. We are working for the court, so we do have to do that on occasion, whether it's
Okay.
testifying or being there for some sort of hearing.
Right on. Hmm. Um, and don't worry about dead spaces because the dead spaces where neither of us are talking or thinking,
Mhm.
I'll just cut those out usually.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, but it has its moments, especially previously working in a small county.
yeah.
It was the last county before you hit the border, so a lot of times we'd get
This was in Minnesota.
yeah, it was in Cook County in Grand Marais, so it was definitely interesting there. I mean, a lot of times we would have Canadians who would just forget to throw the drugs over the bridge before they entered, so they would usually get arrested.
Oh, so you're in the northernmost part of the state.
Yep.
Gotcha.
And then yeah, we had a few weird cases. Like there was somebody who was a lot of Canadians tend to go over the border anyways for their mail, and they would get things shipped there because I guess it was cheaper to have it shipped there, and then they would just pay whatever tax it was at the border, and they would do that, or they would just get their tobacco or alcohol or whatever because it was cheaper there. So there was one case where a Canadian, he used his prescription pads that he had as a working in the medical field to have a bunch of painkillers shipped in, and he was going to sell them. And a federal agency flagged it from Fiji, and they waited for him to
They
pick it
flagged
up.
the package.
Yeah, it was about 10,000 painkillers. So
Oh wow.
definitely not for personal use.
Wow. You know what kind?
I think it was like oxys.
Okay, some sort of oxy.
Yeah, so
Wow.
they picked him up there, and that was definitely an interesting case. And then the town itself it was a very unique area because we had the reservation, we had like the small town people, and then there was a mix of new people coming in wanting to escape from the cities. They had the idea of like Walden's Pond, where it's like I'm gonna go live out here in the middle of nowhere and have be self-sufficient and everything like that. And there were a couple free-spirited people, and they had some. There was a what do you call it? It was a giant rave there, and a guy ended up eating somebody's finger, and that was.
Was he on bath salts?
He took a bunch of morning glory seeds,
Oh, weird.
and he got into a fight with somebody, and then a group of people intervened, and he got on top of the guy, and he bit his pinky finger off and ate it.
He ate it.
And
He
then,
didn't just bite it off and spit it out. He chewed it up and swallowed it or something.
yeah, I think the sheriffs, they brought him to the hospital to kind of just wait to evaluate him, and nothing happened, so they ended up bringing him to jail, and for the whole time he was claiming to be Jesus.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And then I got a notification the next morning, and I just read the report, and I just called my boss, and I said, hey, this is probably going to make some news. I don't think we should even work or have him out on pretrial just with how big this case is. So,
Wow. It's not the first time I've heard of somebody claiming to be Jesus after taking some sort of drugs.
yeah, that was
It's interesting.
it was definitely interesting to work up there, and I figured I wanted some more big city action. I figured, hey, they had some places available in Phoenix, so why not? I wanted some big city action, and
So you made a transfer?
yeah, I put in, and I ended up getting that position, and it was definitely interesting. It was definitely a transition going from, working just with DWIs to more serious crimes like drug sales, um, kidnapping, um, weapons possession. Like all that was just, whoa, this is big city stuff.
So you transferred from Minnesota straight to Maricopa County in Arizona?
Uh, yeah, so I had to go through an academy just like a lot of agencies.
So
And
you'd already been through one in Minnesota, right? It was not much of an academy.
they just did the interview, and then I had about a day and a half of like shadowing somebody who was leaving, and they said, "Here you go,
Whoa.
be a PO, and by the way, you've got a year to do all these things." And then I was in the office with one other person, and so I had to ask him a lot of questions, or I had to go down to a bigger city called Duluth to sit in with other people to get some more training and pick their brains on how to do things.
Right on. Um, so what was the academy like in Arizona? Because you didn't just shadow somebody, you had to go through some sort of like actual structurized training.
Yeah, so there was two. There was the in-house like one that they kind of taught people, hey, here's how things are done here. And then we had to go through a statewide academy, and that was, hey, this is the law of Arizona. This is what you have to know. This is what you should know. This is how we do things here in the state. So I had to do that, and then a firearms academy for about a week.
Oh,
That was a
okay.
statewide thing as well.
That's cool. So do you carry a firearm in your job?
Yes, it's optional, but I ended up after having a gun pulled on me at my previous location in Minnesota. I figured I'd prefer to have that option.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, definitely. So what are the firearm standards? Are they like the same as a police officer?
more or less, yeah. Same type of scoring system and everything, and then distances more or less are going to be the same.
So do you have to score the same like amount of points?
You have to score a certain amount before you're able to pass, and then they
Okay.
also run you through some scenarios like shoot or don't shoot, or
Okay.
simunitions, which are like the
Yeah.
paintball guns.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been shot by simunitions before.
Those hurt. Those
Yeah.
hurt. Like
Yeah, they
they
do.
have us do this one drill called star drill. We stand about from where you and I are sitting,
So
and
we're
they say,
about 4 feet apart.
yeah, and they say, all right, load your gun and then just shoot each other. So
Just to see how it feels.
yeah, so I ended up getting shot. I don't think you could see it, but yeah, it looks like
I can see that.
yeah,
That's from a simunition?
yeah.
And it's permanent?
It's not permanent. I
How long
mean,
ago was this that you got shot by a simunition?
about a week ago.
Oh, okay,
So
okay.
still
So it's
pretty
just a
fresh.
gnarly bruise.
Yeah, so
Right on.
I was careful to just pick somebody that I trusted.
Not to shoot you in like the neck or something.
Well, we had neck protection, but I
Oh.
really didn't feel like testing out to see if that would work or not.
Yeah. I was shot in the throat one time by paintball guns.
Those hurt.
Dude, it was so bad. It hurt so bad. I couldn't believe it. Like paintball guns, they hurt like in the throat and in like the fingers. And you get shot in the fingers, and when you get shot in the ass.
The fleshy parts,
Yes.
like the thighs, like the inner part of the thighs,
Oh, yeah.
that hurts. The head, I've gotten shot a few times in the head
Have
with
you?
a
I
paint.
haven't been shot in the head.
That's pretty bad. And then I would always just like cover up my neck whenever I'd play paintball, and or like my groin area, and just like run blindly and just hope I didn't get hit.
Yeah. Right on. That's fun stuff.
But yeah, I don't think I would want to go do simunitions just on my own, or do that drill for fun. It definitely gets your heart rate up, and having to do it from 4 feet away, I mean, it definitely you have to go rely on your basics. all over again.
Hmm. Mm-hmm. How long did you live in Minnesota?
So I lived there from, so I think in 1994, because I was adopted, and then I was brought to from Korea to Phoenix, and I lived there until like 1993, and then from like 93 until 2009, I lived in Minnesota in like a suburb of Minneapolis.
South Korea, I assume.
Yeah,
So your heritage is 100% Korean.
uh, that I know of. Yeah, I haven't
That
done
you,
one of those
oh,
DNA
okay.
kits or anything like that to see.
Okay. So you were adopted by American people?
Yeah, they're the most Midwestern people that you'll ever know. They've got like the Fargo accents.
Oh, cool. Okay. So you were 3 then when you were adopted?
I was two.
2. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And did you have any siblings?
I found out a couple years ago that I had like several half brothers and sisters, but I don't know much other than that though.
What about your adopted family? Did your adopted parents have any other kids?
Uh, Not that I'm aware of. I think
So you grew up as basically an only child.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So I was an only child growing up, and that was really it had its moments. I'll
Yeah.
say that.
Yeah, was it hard being an only child or
Yes and no. It kind of got lonely because, like, even things like we have like a summer home, and I would always do things like go around and just walk around in the woods with a BB gun. And I was thinking, man, this would be cool if I had a brother so I could either shoot him with a BB gun or like, just like dick around and be brothers
yeah.
and do that kind of stuff. So yeah, it did get lonely, and then I would usually have to just ask a few friends or a friend to come up, and then we would just do that.
Right
But
on. Right on. That must be tough. Mm.
it was nice though having, I think, a lot of attention though, and just saying like if you needed things versus like, oh, why can't you be like your brother or your sister? And so I feel like there was a little, there was and there wasn't pressure to excel and have and like live out my parents' dream or my parent through so my parents could live through me vicariously.
Yeah, and you didn't have to like outperform anyone.
No, so I didn't have to worry about that being like, oh well, my brother was a state champion, so I've got to do this or this or this, or my sister was an all American or like an academic master, and she got like a whatever on the SAT. So
Could you be an all-American coming from Korea?
I can't do math to save my life.
Wait, is an all-American require math?
Well, that's a good question.
I
I
don't
mean,
even know what an all-American is. So it's
well,
like a sports thing,
it's a
isn't it?
sports term, yeah.
Okay. Okay. I
Some
was making an immigration joke, but my other question was so do you get dual citizenship?
I actually I became like a naturalized citizen. My parents did the paperwork right when I came here, so
Okay, so you don't have any Korean citizenship.
no. And I think in order to do that, you'd have to go back and serve several years in the military
Oh, really?
with
Okay.
South Korea for a set amount of years. And
I see. Do you speak any Korean?
so my parents actually sent me to a summer camp like growing up for several years, and I got to learn some basic stuff, but it's I mean, it's just like hello, and that's really it.
So if we dropped you off in Korea by yourself, you probably wouldn't get very far.
I would just probably go to whatever military base and say, please help me.
Right on. Right on.
But surprisingly, I think a lot of people look at me weird when I can actually speak some sort of Spanish. Like,
Oh yeah.
I did that from kindergarten through like my second year of college. So I have enough to get through. But people always look at me like, why is that Asian person speaking
That's
Spanish?
hilarious. Yeah, I can relate to that a little bit. I speak okay Spanish. I used to speak quite a bit more, but it's kind of use it or lose it, right?
Yeah.
But it's really funny seeing people's facial expressions and their reactions when they realize like, oh, this white kid is speaking like fluent Spanish with a great accent, and it's really fun to see people's surprise.
Yeah. I don't think I even got to the point where it's like people look at me. It's just like, wow, this person must have gotten hit in the head with a shovel with how slow that they're speaking Spanish.
Oh,
So,
I dig it.
but yeah, it's definitely been an experience though. Like I, with even a lot of people ask like, would you ever go back to Korea to try to find your parents? I don't know. I think that would be weird, especially having to like living around like these people that you call mom and dad and then saying, I'm going to go find like my biological parents. I think I don't know, it's weird. And I think I would rather just see my parents as like who they are now.
Yeah, that's
So,
good because you're so far removed from your biological parents anyway.
mhm.
That would be strange.
Yeah. And I know, I
Just
don't,
go over there and learn Korean to say what the fuck, what the fuck is this? Why'd you do this?
yeah. And I'd be worried, like, what if one of them is like a major criminal and it's like I really don't want to have to answer or call like somebody and say, "Hey, I'm related to him. Are you guys gonna start following me or tapping my phone?" Because,
Oh, not if they knew the story. I don't think.
well, and the crazy thing is, I went to school with Whitey Bulger's niece.
Who's Whitey Bulger?
So he was a. Did you ever see the movie Black Mass with Johnny Depp in it?
No.
So he played a criminal, one of the biggest criminal bosses in Boston in like the 70s and 80s.
So Whitey Bulger, you said his name is?
Yeah, so
That's the actual criminal, or that's the actor that played the criminal?
that's the actual criminal.
Okay.
So he ran the Irish mob in Boston in the Winter Hill area, and that was like an Irish area. And he disappeared, I think, in the 80s or 90s or something like that. And he was on the FBI's most wanted list, and they picked him up, I think, in the 2010s or so. And him and his girlfriend both got picked up, and the girl I went to school with, she was always telling me, yeah, whenever we were going to the airport, they would always stop and flag us down, and they would ask, hey, where's Whitey? Where is he? And she ended up becoming a social worker in Minnesota. And the crazy thing is, Whitey Bulger's girlfriend actually went to a prison in Minnesota, and they flagged her, and she couldn't go to that women's prison because Whitey's girlfriend was there, and she had the same last name.
Oh, wow.
But she said when she went out to school in Boston, she said she never had problems as a teacher because people would look at the letter that the kids got, and it would always say her last name, and people never had any
So they
issues.
didn't want to mess with it because they knew the Whitey Bulger's his record. They knew who he was and what he was doing. So if she was associated with him, they didn't want any part of it.
Yeah. So, I mean, the name, I guess, is still pretty big out there from my understanding. So,
Okay.
a lot of people were like, we don't want to get her mad or anything. So, we'll just talk to our kids and there won't be any problem.
Wow. Minnesota, isn't that where the George Floyd stuff took place?
Yeah, that was in Minneapolis. And that was interesting to see both. Seeing that I had friends on both sides of things. One
Yeah.
of the guys I actually trained at the gym with, he was one of the witnesses.
Whoa.
And that was crazy to see him. Like, it was like, bro, I saw this guy get fight. Like, I trained with this guy. I knew him. And it's like, I had no idea.
He trained with George Floyd?
No, he trained with at the gym I was going to. And I would see him like,
okay. Gotcha.
I would see him on a regular basis. And then to see him like on CNN, Fox, and like on the trial, it was like, dude, I know this guy. And even the paramedic, I guess he had connections to the fight game, and he knew. It was weird to see that he knew some of the people that I trained with at one point. But it was definitely weird seeing not only that, but also like friends and family members who were involved with like the state patrol when they had to deploy those the state troopers down there. I had friends
for the rioting?
Yeah,
How long after the George Floyd murder did the riots happen?
I want to say a week
Yeah.
or 2 weeks at
Okay.
most.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
and then having friends protest, and then I was just glued to one friend who was just down there just streaming everything. So I felt like it was probably better information than what was going on in the news
So
to see it.
so they were protesting the decision that basically that officer had not done anything wrong. Is that what they were protesting?
And that they weren't really doing anything. They weren't
They weren't
arresting.
prosecuting the policeman who killed him.
Yeah, there wasn't. I think they just wanted swift action with their badges, their guns, and they wanted them behind bars right away versus waiting until, well, everything happened.
Yeah.
So
Well,
it was just really crazy to see though. People on both sides that were involved, like people I grew up with, people that I trained with, family members, everybody, friends. They were either somehow involved with, not necessarily like burning down the one of the precincts, but there and like recording everything or protesting or even just like sitting in their apartment being like, whoa, holy shit, that's smoke. We can smell that. And my parents were still living in Minnesota at the time, and they said it was kind of eerie. It was like they could smell the smoke from their house, and they were about 20 minutes away from the cities. And they said the only cars that were going into Minneapolis at the time when the riots were in full swing were cop cars, like the state patrol and everything. Nobody else was going into town, and that must have been really really weird to see. It just like
yeah.
the only cars going in are law enforcement.
Kind of surreal.
Yeah, yeah, that's what they made it seem like, and I think a lot of people's mentality changed too. Like with the whole structure of living, the whole like living situation is way different in Minnesota with like housing and everything. It's way more segregated. Like think of it like multiple circles. So you have the cities, and it has a mix of like affluent, rich and poor people just in different boroughs, kind of like Phoenix. Like you have like the Garfield area, which is like the part, and then you have some more sketchier parts like 27th and Indian School, for example. Like you don't want to go there at night. And then you had the next ring, which was like the sketchier suburbs. So something like Glendale. And then you had the really affluent suburbs, similar to like Chandler or Gilbert.
Yeah.
And then you had the suburbs, and that it was just really weird with how it was, and seeing how the housing and the living situation is compared to here, and how much more segregated it is in Minneapolis compared to Phoenix, for example.
Segregated, huh? So so it really is like you'll go to certain neighborhoods and it'll be all white people or all black people or all brown people.
Yeah, and then there's like historic boroughs too. Like my grandpa, he grew up in northeast Minneapolis, and it was really it was heavy Polish, Irish people, and now it's more diversified now. It's not as safe as it used to be. I think there was that post-war boom, and there was the white flight from the cities to the suburbs, and then there was I guess another white flight movement where they moved out of the suburbs to farther suburbs, and now I think they're seeing more of a move where it's another flight from going from those suburbs to even farther out into the country.
That's
And
kind of I've been thinking about doing that myself. Like I made a move from a big city to a smaller city, and even now I'm seeing all of the movement, all the California people moving out of California, and they're coming to the next closest place. And unfortunately, that's here, at least part of it. I mean, of course, there's Nevada, Utah, and other places, but there's a huge influx of people from California coming here. So I see giant city move to a smaller city that I like, and then it's having a giant influx of people, and that makes me want to move to an even smaller city further away, further out in the boonies. Can't do that right now, but like that's I can relate.
yeah, and I know California, even they're seeing like more people are leaving California than people are coming in,
Yeah.
and they're going to all these places like Idaho, Texas, Arizona. Like those are some of the top three places that they're moving to.
Yeah, Texas, that's right. There's a big movement of California people to Texas. I bet the Idaho people freaking love it.
They hate it.
I know they hate it. I know I got some friends that live in Idaho, and they're more hardcore up there than Arizona. Arizona's kind of the Wild West, but Idaho, that's like, man, you better there's you be careful because there's real repercussions because these people take their lives seriously and their land seriously.
Yeah, I mean, I know one person. He's there, and I mean, he hates it. He
In Idaho.
wants. Oh, he loves Idaho, but he just doesn't like some of the new policies that are coming, and he just wants to live and be left alone with him
Because
and
these
his family.
massive amounts of people from a liberal place are moving there and then voting the way that they think they should vote and kind of changing the whole nature of that place.
Yeah, so
Yeah. Yeah, I feel that. That's not cool. Now, George Floyd was the event that birthed Black Lives Matter movement, right?
or or it brought it more into the spotlight.
Was it already a thing?
I'm not quite sure, but I just know that they seem to be the forerunner. They seem to be pretty vocal when the incident happened.
So Black Lives Matter started in 2013, apparently,
Okay.
which is a long time before George Floyd. But I guess this was like a spotlight for them. They jumped themselves into the spotlight because of the George Floyd murder. And that created a massive polarizing wave. And I get it. You know, black people in this country have been oppressed to a certain degree for a long time, and only in recent decades has that changed.
And only recently they've been able to get validation. I mean, I, as bleak as it sounds, I think our country has a history of treating people who aren't Caucasian poorly. I mean, if you look at the Native Americans, even if you look at Asian Americans with what they had to endure during World War II with the Japanese being interned. I mean,
Yeah,
African Americans.
Japanese internment camps. There were Chinese internment camps in the late 1800s, I think. But yeah, it's not just black people. It's any other race. But I mean, from a white man's perspective, the hard time I have with it is that it's like I see something like that and I'm like, well, yeah, no shit, they matter. Like, whose doesn't?
Mm-hmm.
But apparently that's like a not okay thing to say for people that are a part of that type of a movement, which I don't understand. I mean, are you just trying to highlight the history of oppression? Is that what's going on? They're trying to amplify what's happened in the past as far as oppression?
And I think they have every right to be mad. I mean, I think there's been, I know statistics say more. I had to do a thesis for my master's program if the criminal justice system was racist. So I had to look at things like traffic stops, police brutality, officer involved shootings, even like the cash bail system. And unfortunately, I think, for example, like the cash bail system, it's in place, but I think it's harder to post bond if you aren't working or if you don't or if you don't have like collateral or you don't have anybody to call and say, hey, can you post my bond? It's $500. Not too many people have that. I think it's so I think with my thesis I said it it wasn't intended to be racist, but with the way statistics are, it absolutely looks awful, like with police brutality, because I think you see it a lot more. And I think with technology, I mean, you can see things or you can post things live stream now. And I think it's more accessible. So it's definitely more amplified. So you can see these things on
Mm-hmm.
TV or you can see them on social media. Just all these things that like we didn't have growing up. Like we didn't know what was going on, in another state. I mean, I know this sounds so awful, but I don't think, even with the George Floyd incident, if it wasn't for the technology that we had today with live streaming, and the smartphones that we have now, I don't think many people would have heard about it. It would have just been a small thing in the newspaper, or if it would have even made that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good and bad, the access with technology, because like now there's what seems to be better accountability for this type of stuff.
Absolutely, and it keeps people in check, which I think it's what they need, because sometimes sometimes it's what they need, is having people hold these officers accountable for their actions when they could have gotten away with it.
Yeah.
Even my my dad's uncle, he was a Minneapolis cop in the '60s during the civil rights movement.
Oh wow.
He was, from what I heard, he wasn't the best or most ethical person on the job. I'll say
Yeah.
that, and I think that probably wouldn't have flied by today's standards.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, because there's so many more eyes. There's
yeah,
people watching. There's people that are willing to say stuff, and
yeah.
yeah,
Even for our job, like we always have to be aware of just being professional. I mean, there's people always filming us, or there's cameras in the house, so we have to watch what we say, and we have to keep it professional, and that's something that I always strive to do, keeping it professional, because I don't want to have a bad impression in the community.
right.
I mean, I'm here to do my job, but I also want to try to be as polite as possible and respectful of people's things and of the area. I know
Yeah.
I've seen in some incidents where some people just don't do that, and it's like, that's why you're giving the people wearing the badge like a bad name, is because you're doing this. And I think that's another reason why, like, there's a lack of people wanting to go into law enforcement today.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it seems like it's an imbalance because you have now that there's so many more eyes available through things like phone cameras in everybody's pockets. There's so much more fear about overstepping the boundary that people are now not willing to do what is necessary to carry out the task a lot of times. And that's detrimental to law enforcement at large, I think. Because if police if police officers are afraid to fully engage in their job because they might get, spotlighted for this or for that, or going outside, or even making a mistake, like they're people, they make mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
There are things that there are fucked up cops who are murderers and liars,
Mm-hmm.
but there are also a lot of really good people who became police officers so that they can do the right thing and help people. And those people make mistakes. So there needs to be a logical, how did my dad say it? He said, there needs to be logical deductive reasoning in these types of situations where, like, okay, well, what happened? What are the boundaries? Was this a mistake? Was this intentional? And there needs to be grace for mistakes. And there also needs to be accountability for, mistakes and repeated mistakes and mistakes that should not have taken place through, like, neglect. So I think it's a really important thing to focus on right now with balance, especially because you said there's a lot of people that, there's not a lot of police officers that are, or people that are wanting to become police officers because of stuff like that and because of these riots. And it's like, okay, well, at what point do I call the police and they don't show up? Then what do I do?
Mm-hmm.
And then what does anybody do? And it's up to you. You're your own first line of defense.
Yeah.
And excuse me. But like we've heard, some people talk about there needs to be, like, we don't need to defund the police. We need to do the opposite. We need to fund the police, but we also need to have a bigger say in what they're doing, because we don't want it to become a paramilitary organization to where it looks like the military is running the streets. We don't want that. But we do want to have capable people that are doing the job well, that know the boundaries, know the limits, and that they have control over the situation without it needing to become force unless it really gets to that point. I like to use the Jedi from Star Wars as a good example. They're keepers of the peace. They're mediators. They're, when they need to be, they're law enforcement. But ultimately, they're balanced, kind individuals that are here to serve we the people. And, it's an honor. It should be an honor to hold that type of a position. So, I really hope that that whole thing with defunding changes in the opposite direction so that we can get these guys trained up to do the best job possible for all of us. So that when we call the police, they show up and they
Mm.
show up in a hurry.
Well, even to add on what you're saying, I think even with officers, I think to get them more invested in the community, they should have to live there. I mean, I'm not saying being next door neighbors to the drug house that they're going to be raiding, but within the city limits, so they can understand the problems and the needs of the community, and they can be more invested in it versus being like, all right, I'm going to go home. This isn't going to be my problem anymore. You know, I'll have to worry about it tomorrow. Versus being like, how can I be proactive? What can I do after, whether it's like community outreach or making myself available to neighbors or being friendly to people or volunteering my time in my off duty to help out with cleaning up the park or, coordinating something with like neighborhood watch if that's a thing anymore.
Yes, and I think that there should be police officer volunteer involvement in things like neighborhood watch. However, things like cleaning up garbage in the neighborhood, I think that should be its own thing because law enforcement officers are public servants. Period. And I don't like. I don't want those police officers to be like, oh, well, I guess there's no police calls out right now, so I'm just going to go pick up trash. I think that needs to be its own thing. I think we need to have a crew, like crews of people that go around to pick up trash.
Mm-hmm.
And that's their freaking job to keep the place clean. Now, the other aspect of that is I do think I don't know that I think it should be a requirement for the police to live within their jurisdiction of enforcement when they're at work because at that point if that's the case then they should only ever be assigned to an area that's not where they live because that would become a conflict of interest especially with criminals or even other people on the force.
Mm-hmm.
So and if they are required to do that, and investment in the community, I completely agree with. I think there needs to be an investment in the community, and I think that that's a good way to try and make that happen. But at the same time, for the police officer, like they're doing that every single day. When can they take their boots off and chill?
Mm-hmm.
They need that just
Yeah,
as much.
I think that was probably one of the most difficult things working and living in a small town. Like the main town, I think I was about 20 minutes away, but the grocery store and everything I needed, the bars, everything was there. And I knew I couldn't, it was just weird to go in there and people to see my family and be like, oh, I saw your wife and kid. And it's like, I don't want you to know that. Don't ask to pick up my kid.
Exactly.
But I do think if they live not necessarily like in that district, like I know with Phoenix, they have like certain precincts. I don't think they should have to live in that precinct, but if they live within the city,
Well, that's a good example, and I can agree with that with Phoenix because Phoenix is huge geographically and population wise. So
a
it's
smaller town like Sholo, that might be a little bit harder to justify.
exactly because at that point, when you have a small town, then you have very few law enforcement officers over a much bigger range of land, and those people generally automatically are invested much more in that area. They probably, have working relationships with the community, with different people in the town. But in a giant metropolis like Phoenix, it's yeah, I guess it's a different story.
Yeah, you can blend in. I mean, I love the fact like I don't supervise the area I live in, so I mean, I can just walk around in a t-shirt and shorts and go into the bar or I can go somewhere. I don't really have to worry about that as much, and it's really nice
Hmm.
because before I would end up just driving to Canada and then just getting all my things done and I knew they can't go over the border, so I'm not going to see anybody. And I had some friends that were over in Thunder Bay, so I'd go train jujitsu. I'd go to the bars with them, and I'd hang out with them versus having to worry about like, all right, who am I going to have to run into on a weekend if I just want to get a beer and hang out with some friends.
Yeah, yeah, you don't have to walk around with that worry. Yeah. Did you vote in this last election?
I did. Yes, it was
And
the first time.
it what?
It was the first time I ever did the midterms or primaries, anything like
Yeah.
that.
So did you go to a polling place or how did you do it?
I just did it over the write in the mail in ballot,
Okay, so you sent it through the mail.
and I just kept my fingers crossed.
Did
And
you check afterward to see if it got
absolutely,
counted?
I did, and it did get
Okay,
counted.
cool. I checked and mine got counted as well. I filled out the early ballot. I filled out the early ballot and then I went and dropped it off at a polling location in person. And yeah, it's interesting. During the primaries, when I went to go vote in the primaries, I went physically to the place to drop it off as well. And I went back there to that same place later at like 8 or 9 o'clock at night after they had closed. I just wanted to see what was going on. And what I saw was really interesting. It's like there were like, I don't know, maybe 6 to 10 people in there. They were like older people, older like over. They were all like older than 50, and they were just collecting ballots and moving them to consolidating them or whatever to where they're going to go count them. I don't know how it works in this county, but there was no security, there were no police, there were no government official vehicles. It was all just like it looked like volunteers. I was astounded. I was like, "Whoa, this is we're having like issues with the election from 2 years ago, and this is how it's being run." I I would have expected there to be some sort of security at least to prevent fuckery.
No, actually, I worked at an election site when I was 17, 18. Uh, right when it was the McCain Obama election, I figured, hey, they offered that through school and they said, hey, you can get out early. So I figured, hey, it's a great chance for me to get out early. I already voted this morning and I'm getting paid to do it. And it was all volunteers. There's no police officers. And it was just like you check people in, and at the end of the day, they just ran it through the machine, but they just locked the doors, but there wasn't any sort of oversight. And I mean, granted, this was in 2008, so it's been a minute since I worked in one, but that's all I remember. It was pretty laid back. I mean, the
Yeah.
only thing they really seemed to want actively enforce was no, you couldn't influence the election by wearing shirts, or there were a few people that screamed like Obama really loud as they were walking out, and then we just had to ask him to leave. But that seemed to be like the biggest problem.
Yeah, you couldn't be there with your opinion
Yeah,
out in front.
yeah, and they said if you had a political shirt, you had to turn it inside out and wear it. But
Well, back in 2008, that I am not aware of any kind of claims of elections being screwed with until the last couple of years.
until I think 2020, because I
That's the
think
first one I'm aware of.
it seemed like everything was fairly normal even during the 2016 election. I mean, I can remember just staying up just to see what would happen, because I mean, as long as I can remember, the results were almost overnight, except maybe the Bush and Gore in like
Oh,
2000,
four, I think.
2004. Like this was no, this was before the Iraq War.
So this is
So this was
2000.
like 2000. That must have been 2000. So I remember that went on till November, but that's the only time I can ever remember some sort of election taking that long was the 2020 election.
Yeah.
Just hearing the results. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just been, since then, it's just been weird though. Like,
Yeah, and I think that the voting machines that they were using to count the votes, they switched them all over to these new machines or whatever prior to 2020, and
mm-hmm,
that's when all the weird stuff started happening. So then you have things like, I think it's Nancy Pelosi's husband who has a major investment in the company that makes those voting machines. So that's a conflict of interest. And then you have like why don't we count them by hand, especially after 2020 when there was, you know, whatever your opinion is on the matter, whether you think the election was stolen or not, there's enough commotion about this issue that we should probably check into it and like look at it really hard and make some changes so that this type of commotion isn't even rising up again. We want to be 100% sure that when we go vote, that we know that our vote's being counted and applied to the entire thing.
Well, and it's not people just like Alex Jones that are spewing this and saying, it's the lizard people doing it. It's actually people that are like normal, who are level-headed, who are saying, all right, something is wrong here.
Yeah.
Like, even my wife, she said something just seems off. And she's not the type of person who wears a tinfoil hat and says, aliens are tracking me and the chemicals in the water are turning frogs gay like Alex Jones is preaching.
Yeah, well, there's a spectrum of conspiracy, and I don't know when it was, somewhere between like 2010 and 2016. There was like this uprising of people, not an uprising. There was a lot more people that started to pay attention to these allegations of conspiracy and stuff. And there was the other group of people that's like, oh, I'm not like that, I'm not into that, I'm not a part of it, I don't want to be a part of it, so I'm going to write that off and not look at it again. And those people still aren't looking at it. And that like, I guess, kind of group or mentality of people aren't willing to look at information further than the top layer. They're not looking any deeper into it because, oh, they're not like that. They've already decided that they don't like that. But then these conspiracy theories start to come true, one after the other after the other. And some of the things that Alex Jones was saying, a handful of years ago have come true.
Even things like they were saying Epstein.
Oh, he was talking about that 6 years ago or more.
And people were brushing it off, and now it's like, whoa. Like,
No.
how deep is this actually going to go?
Well, no wonder the guy went crazy. He knew the truth about a lot of different things a long time before it actually surfaced.
Mm-hmm.
Poor guy.
Yeah. I mean, some of the things he makes are outlandish.
Yeah.
Like the Sandy Hook shooting, for example. Like,
I don't know enough about that one. From what I understand is that he claimed that it was a false flag event when it was not a false flag event.
yeah, something like that.
I don't
saying
know.
There's crisis actors, but it's like kids actually died. I mean, there's no doubt about
Well,
that.
can it be both? Can it be both a false flag and kids actually died?
I mean, for one, I think it could push the agenda that for more gun control, because look at what happened. I remember ARs just flew off the shelf because everybody was worried about guns being banned. You couldn't find 22 or 9mm, and finding ammo was hard. I remember I was going to school and I started just getting into shooting. I was like, man, this is a bad time to get into it. I can't find any ammo.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, so, well, incidents like that, though, I mean, a false flag is basically, in my understanding of it, it's a claim that this thing happened when it really didn't happen. But then what the opposite side would say is that, oh, this was a school shooting spree.
mm-hmm.
Now, could it be an organized, intended school shooting spree in order to achieve a certain political outcome? Yes, absolutely, that's possible. We've seen that happen in all sorts of different cases. Not necessarily with just school shootings, but I don't know if it was a false flag. I haven't looked into it at all, but yeah, he does say some outlandish things like something's turning the frogs gay. We'll find out in about 5 years. The frogs are turning gay, and here's why. I'm just kidding.
We'll see.
Yeah, we'll find out.
But,
the interdimensional beings. He talks about that too.
I mean,
He does say some wild shit.
he could be right about some of those things. I mean, look at here in Arizona, they want to build the Space Force base. I mean, and Arizona has a lot of sightings for UFOs. I mean, and now the government is starting to actually acknowledge that UFOs exist.
They are acknowledging it, which is pretty interesting.
And even the lead singer from Blink 182, Tom DeLonge,
Yeah.
that guy is into it, and he's pushing for it.
What's that? He has a whole a company or
Yeah.
he created a company that basically all they do is they take this information and they put it through a screening process to see, well, is this bullshit? Is this a real claim, a real sighting, or is this something that somebody made up? And they're compiling all of this data. And let me look up what that. Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's called To the Stars, and it has an academy. It looks like, I don't know what that's all about, but that's what he's doing. So so you have people that are now observing conspiracies that have come true, conspiracy theories that are proven to be actual conspiracies, and then people that are examining these UFO incidents at the governmental scale. They're admitting it. It's really interesting. A lot of change in the last handful of years.
Well, even when you look at like the first major sighting with the Roswell incident, and if you look at like the technology that the United States has had around that time, and then like to the 60s and 70s, like the technology just
It jumped,
it
right?
jumped. It was like, wow, we went to from planes to jets
To the moon.
to the moon, and we have computers now that are the size of that can fit in our hands. Like they used to fill like a whole room like this. It's like there's no way somebody just got that. I do think maybe there is the possibility that they reverse engineered alien technology to make it run.
It's
I mean, there's a
possible.
possibility.
It's possible. I also think that it's possible that it could have been inspiring to people.
Mm-hmm.
And especially something like science fiction. Somebody comes up with an idea and they write a book about it. And it's this amazing story and it inspires them. And then based on that inspiration, you come up with an idea or an invention. And your invention is successful. And then, okay, well, now you invented this new technology. And then that new technology is going to spread. And everybody that looks at this new technology that has any kind of a motivation, they're going to say, can this be improved? How can I improve this? First of all, how does this work? How can I make it better? So you have hundreds of thousands or millions of people even looking at this one form of technology, trying to figure out, how do I make this better? So it makes sense to me that it can be exponentially speeding up based on like how people's minds observe technology and how to make it better. So it could be aliens too. I don't know.
I don't think we'll ever know. I think the government does a pretty good job hiding secrets.
I think we'll know.
Or who knows? I mean, isn't it weird though that the United States developed a new branch of the military, the Space Force?
Yeah, it's interesting because it's the United States, but it's an entire planet,
Mm-hmm.
and they don't have dominion over the planet or the space.
Or the moon or anything.
Oh yeah,
They don't own any
yeah.
mining rights. They don't do any of that.
Who owns the water? Man, it's God's water. You know? Oh.
But you know, somewhere out there, somebody wants to go into the recruiter's office and say, "Hey, I just want to sign up for Space Force so I can clap some alien cheeks and be the first person to do that."
Ah.
You know that there is somebody out there.
Oh yeah, you know that's against Space Force regulation to be clapping alien cheeks, though. You can't be fornicating with these.
Well, they'll bring back some alien STD and who knows.
Or you'll be interbreeding with aliens and you'll make some wild race, some new race.
Yeah, we had a
I'm just kidding.
10-year, and I was like, I know a lot of the people I went to high school with, like a lot of them followed the same path of just going into business, and they're staying in Minnesota, and it's like, I didn't want to do that. I want to do something cool and say like, hey, call me special agent, you know, you need to call me that instead, and here's my business card, it looks really cool.
So do you have any family out here?
Yeah, my folks, they're doing the snowbird thing.
Oh, cool.
So they're living at the cabin that we have during the summer, and they're doing this Sun City West thing.
Are they good drivers?
Yeah, they aren't slow like
All right.
the normal Sun
All
City
right.
West drivers.
All right. Okay.
But it's been weird with my dad. He's embracing the whole retirement life, and he's trying to figure out like what to do with himself. And just for fun, I got him into just a basic pistol class. And he was,
Oh,
and then he just went down the wormhole. He's like, yeah, I need this, this, and this, and it's like,
was he a gun guy before?
no,
Oh, nice, dude. You
no,
flipped the switch.
because we had a like a 22 rifle, but he never took it out shooting. I asked him to take me out, and he never did that. But I don't know what it was, whether it was like the George Floyd riots, because I talked with my mom. I said, you guys might want to consider getting a gun in the event this goes out into the suburbs and people start protesting there. You might want to have something just in case. And they're like, oh, yeah, we'll look into it. So I ended up gifting my dad my old duty weapon that I had because we were swapping out. I figured, hey, I could keep it in the family, and it has sentimental value.
Yeah.
So as soon as I gave that to him and got him involved in the class, he's like, I want to do this, this, and this. And I was like, hey, you want to do a rifle class with me? He's like, yeah, just tell me when and where.
Awesome. Awesome. I have a good friend that lives kind of in a hood area. Had some scary stuff happen to him. Well, not to him, but right outside his door, his where he lives. There was a lot of gunshots, and it sounded like somebody was chasing somebody down and shooting at him. And after that happened, luckily, like before that happened, I felt compelled for some reason. I'd gotten a new pistol, so I had an extra one, and I was going to try and trade it in or sell it back to the gun store, and they'd give me like $80 for it. I'm like, what the, dude? Carrying around a garbage gun is worth way more than $80.
Oh yeah.
That's a life or more, and so I felt compelled to give one of my friends who didn't have a gun a gun. So I let him, he's kind of the keeper of it now. It's still my gun, but he's the keeper of it, and he's been practicing with it, and it's really good. It feels good to have my friend who's in a sketchy area be a little bit more protected.
Yeah, it's always nice to have that. I mean, even when we first moved here, we lived in Maryville. I had no idea
Yeah.
about that. I asked somebody who was a PO in the area for. He was there like in 2012, and I moved here in 2018. I asked him, hey, can you tell me about the area? And he said, oh yeah, it's not that bad. And then first thing I did when I got there was I called somebody that I knew from Phoenix, and I said, hey, what can you tell me about the area? And he said, dude, you just need to move out. Just use your credentials and say, get me out of the lease. I have fear for my safety. And that was one of the sketchiest apartments I ever lived in.
Did you get out early?
We ended up staying there for about a year and a half.
Mm-hmm.
And then we just decided to buy a house after that.
You ever have any issues there?
Not directly with us. I think people just saw me drag my vest in, and I had my gun on me when I would come home, so people never gave me issues. But I know some of our neighbors were into some shady stuff, and they must have pissed somebody off because they had their windows broken. So
Yeah.
I always just minded my own business.
Your friend that told you that area is not that bad, did they live in that area?
No, he was living actually in Goodyear in like 2011, 2012. So that was some pretty outdated information.
Yeah, that's miles away.
Yeah. So I learned not to take his word for that if I asked him about anything Arizona related.
Nice. That's wise.
It's definitely been a great move. I've enjoyed Arizona. It's the outdoor activities are a little bit scarier with the snakes. I don't do snakes at all, and I mean hunting. Fuck, that's hard to do here.
Yeah.
Like before, I was able to just bring my shotgun and some boots and then some hunting clothes and then go out on my lunch break in Minnesota and just drive 10 minutes up an old logging trail and just go hunting for my lunch break.
Wow.
And I wouldn't have to worry about things like rattlesnakes or scorpions or, getting lost and dying of dehydration because there was always a stream nearby or.
Wow.
Like, man.
That's beautiful. What kind of animals up there did you have to worry about?
So we had, some moose, black bear, which weren't too much of an issue. And then there were rumors about wildcats and people's pets missing, but we never saw any.
So not really any major concerns. I
Yeah,
mean, yeah, you got black bears and moose that can be real dangerous if you run into them, but
and then wolves and coyotes, but
wolves, ugh, I don't like
I
wolves.
mean,
Freak me out, man.
and one of the things I always did was I just didn't want to go hunting alone. So I would just stay close to the logging trails and maybe walk a mile or two, but I would just walk in a straight line so I knew where I was going.
That's good.
But they would always have. I had a friend, he was actually one of the only attorneys in the county, and there were times where we didn't get along so well, but there were times where we'd still be civil and we would go to the gym together and lift, and we would go hunting together a lot. And he was in search and rescue. And there was a few times where he got called out when we were hunting that he had to go find or rescue somebody who either got lost or they were just missing.
Wow.
And that was pretty common. That was up in the
How common?
boundary waters. I want to say at least in the during the tourist months. I want to say at least once a week.
Oh wow. Okay, yeah, that's pretty frequent.
Yeah, because
Okay.
the boundary waters are a pretty big tourist destination if you just want to take a canoe and get away from everything. You fill out a card and you leave it there, and sometimes people either forgot to sign sign out, or they just weren't heard from and they would just go missing.
Oh wow.
When I was on the job, I would have to say the crazy thing happened was we were just doing a normal probation search. We got a picture of somebody. He sent a picture of his ex fiance's ring, and he said, "I have it here, safe and sound." And it was a picture of the ring in a safe, and then I noticed the forend of a shotgun. So I sent it to my boss, and I said, "Hey, can we look at this guy's house?" And long story short, we ended up going to the house, and the person said, "This isn't the house. You need to go here." And he previously used that house saying he lived there. Long story short, we were able to get approval after going through the chain of command to search the other house. So we ended up just transporting him to the house. We found a key that matched the one to get in the house. When we got in there, we found, my coworker just opened the drawer and found two handguns right away. So we were like, all right, cool, let's keep searching. My buddy opens a blanket and there's two pipes with fuses that come out. And he's like, "Hey, Alex, can you look at this?" And one of my coworkers who was also in the CID, and he had all this expert knowledge on like post blast investigations, arson, all that. He just looks over and he says, "Dude, that's a pipe bomb." So I looked over at him and I said, "I've never seen one of these. What do we do? Do we just leave and tell PD like, yo, there's bombs?" And then I got thinking, all right, well, I got a buddy in ATF. I'm going to just give him a call. So I gave him a ring and I said, "Yo, we're searching this house. We found some pipe bombs. I've got a buddy here. He's got some investigation experience in this, and he's certified through whatever the Department of Defense sends those guys through." So I sent him a picture and he says, "All right, I'm going to call my boss." And then, 10 minutes later, the guy calls me and he says, "All right, we're sending a dude out from the FBI bomb squad to come out." So they said, "Hey, you just need to leave the house." So I'm thinking, holy shit, like this could go off and we could all be like just a bunch of pink mist.
Oh wow.
So the
So
supervisor,
where did the fuse go? Where was it attached to?
it was like so it was a pipe, and then there was like a fuse on top. It was like going through like a cap, it looked like.
Okay.
And then they said it looked like a pipe bomb.
So it wasn't attached to anything. It was just a fuse hanging out in the air.
Inside, yeah, just
Like
outside
you could light it.
in the pipe, yeah.
You could grab a lighter, light it, and that bomb would go off.
Yeah,
Probably.
so we didn't want to touch it. We weren't sure if there was anything underneath it because it was under some blankets.
Oh, okay. So you didn't move it or anything.
So I just said, "Dude," and this guy, who found it. It was his first week on the job.
Oh, nice. Lucky him.
Yeah. So I calmly told the supervisor, I said, hey, I just got off the phone. They want us to get out right away. They're sending some bomb techs. The local PD guys are like, hey, why are you stopping? Like, we don't want to wait around. And I told them, and I said, we already called this. And they said, wait, what credentials do you have? And my coworker, he just has the biggest shit-eating grin on his face, and he said, well, as a matter of fact, I'm post-blast certified arson investigations by the ATF, and I'm currently a federal agent. And they were like, oh, okay, well, we'll just shut down the street and we'll wait. So we ended up waiting, and some dude from the FBI bomb squad came out. He was like, all right, what are we working with? And he's like, can anybody walk me through? And nobody was volunteering. Like,
Oh, wow.
I don't know what to look for. So my coworker's like, all right, we'll just go. We'll just go together because I've got some experience. They weren't able to find anything, like fertilizer or any other like components. So they deemed it safe. And then we ran across a huge gun safe. And we were like, all right, well, let's try to get the combination. We weren't able to get it. So we had to open it, and we had to call more people from our department to get authorization to breach the safe.
Oh, wow.
And then, so we ended up using one of those, I think they're called hooligans and sledgehammers to try to smash it open.
Oh, wow. That sounds impossible.
Yeah, and it was bolted into the ground, so we couldn't move it or anything like that.
That's one of the methods of breaching a safe is like a sledgehammer?
Yeah, a hooligan and a sledgehammer.
Huh.
So the FBI guy he tried doing something with the safe to make sure there wasn't any explosives.
Yeah, that was my other thought, is that you wouldn't want to put some kind of a charge on there to open it because it could be filled with explosives.
Yeah, so he was able to just eventually look at,
Or even a torch of
Yeah.
some kind. You probably wouldn't want to use that either, huh?
No, and we weren't sure what to do, so he said, all right, we'll just manually breach it. So we tried doing that. We were able to like look inside, and he was like, all right, well, it's safe. Let's try to use one of those handheld saws. We weren't able to get through, so there was a Phoenix guy there, so I was just like, hey, dude, can you call somebody from fire department just to see if they can come out and use, whatever tools they have? And he said, all right, just give me like a couple minutes. A couple minutes later, a giant fire truck rolls up. They're like, what's this about? We need you to help open the safe. They're like, all right. So they bring out this huge ass saw, and it's around midnight, and they start cutting into it. And the whole room is just filled with like smoke, exhaust, whatever it was from the safe. The fire alarms were going off. All the neighbors were looking at us because we were there for about 2-3 hours before that, trying to figure out what to do. They finally get it open, and we recover about 13 guns. The ring, I guess the lady said it was valued at $20,000. So I was thinking, fuck, this is like half my paycheck. I'm just going to grab it and give it right away to the officer and give him the reporting number and say, here, take it. I don't want to have anything to do with it. I don't want to be held responsible for it. Here's the police number. Don't get me involved. Here you go. Take it. Put it in evidence. Give it back to her. And that was the first thing I grabbed. I didn't worry about all the guns that were in there. That was the first thing I said. I was like, I got to grab it just so she can have it and she doesn't sue either us or anybody else.
Yeah.
And then we ended up recovering about 13 guns, and some of them were really nice.
So did you find the guy? The guy was...
We ended up arresting the guy and bringing him. He ended up going back to the county.
What were the charges?
Prohibited possessor.
So
that's
times 13 or 15
times,
or whatever.
yeah. And so for every gun, they ended up charging him for that. They charged him for a felony for each gun he had in possession. So yeah,
he got charged with prohibited possession times like 16, including the pipe bombs.
Yeah.
And the pipe bombs, you can't legally have a pipe bomb in most places, I assume, right?
No.
So that's its own charge, probably?
Yeah. I think that's going into federal territory.
Okay.
Um,
which is unfortunate. And I mean, I think we should be able to have whatever we want as long as we're not using it nefariously.
yeah, I mean, I think it'd be cool to have like a stick of dynamite just to
That'd be
blow
sweet,
up a
man.
tree, or
I can have a flare in my trunk, a road flare. It looks like a stick of dynamite. Can't I just have dynamite too in case I need it?
it'd be cool. But I think, since what was it, whatever the ATF passed that banned like Tommy guns and being able to go to Sears and buying them, I think coupled with that and dynamite, I think the prohibition kind of pushed them to make those kinds of things illegal.
Yeah, it's really not good either because today you have so many politicians pushing for gun control, and then you have the Prime Minister of Canada that somehow is allowed to just say, okay, we are now freezing all handgun sales and transfers, period. So people aren't allowed to buy handguns or trade or sell handguns anymore in Canada. And I think that applies to assault rifles as well up there now. And
Well,
that's our freaking next door neighbor.
well, and the crazy thing was, one of my friends, he's on a gang unit with in Canada, and he said that the it's always a big bust whenever they find a gun. Whenever they find a gun, and it's like here in America, you find a gun, it's not really a big deal when you do a warrant.
He does that in Canada.
Yeah, he's in a bigger city
Yeah.
on their gang unit. So I mean, you think finding a gun would be like an everyday thing, but he says it's not. It's like the find of a lifetime when you find a gun.
Wow, because their gun laws up there is like nobody has a gun.
Yeah.
Very few people have a gun.
Well, a lot of the people that I know that have guns, I mean, they just use it for hunting. The cop, he actually sent me a picture, and he was like, "Look at this bad boy I got," and it was like a Maverick shotgun. I was like, "I've got an AR."
Yeah. Yeah, that's
It's like I
baby
hated to
stuff.
one up him, but
Every-
he was so proud. It's like I don't want to ruin this guy's moment and say, "Oh, that's cute. I got."
Right, right.
And,
Yeah, but over here everybody's got a shotgun or three.
oh yeah, and nobody blinks an eye if you like whip out an AR or an
Yeah.
AK.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's like an Arizona thing.
Yeah, well that should be issued to our youth once they reach a certain maturity level, along with a Bible and the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. I think that those should all go hand in hand.
But I think you need to pass some sort of test first, because I wouldn't want to.
No, I'm being a little facetious there, but I think it should be I think it should be a part of our education system, is like, how to maturely handle guns and how to, like something that's not taught in our schools really much at all right now is the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the amendments, the writings of the founding fathers, which is not good because the generations that are coming up, the millennials, let's say, are apparently just not educated in all that. And they're
No.
being educated by things like TikTok.
Well, and I had to find out things on my own, like even with, for example, firearms. Like I knew nothing about them. I had to learn about it. I had to learn how to shoot all by myself. And even with the Constitution, like, yeah, we learned about it in junior high, and
Yeah, you learned what it was, but you didn't dive into it, right?
Mhm.
I was super fortunate in my youth because I was a part of the Police Explorer program, which I wanted to be a police officer for most of my childhood. And so I was working towards that, going to, I think it was American Legion Law Enforcement Career Academy, and then doing the Police Explorer program. So I got to go on all kinds of ride-alongs, and I was able to ask police officers questions all the time of like, oh, is this legal? Is that legal? So I got kind of an inside scoop on like what a lot of the laws are when it comes to things like guns, possession, the ages. Like in Arizona, for example, when you turn 18, you can legally open carry a handgun, but you can't buy one until you're 21. So if somebody gifts you a handgun at 18, you can carry it around legally. But you can't buy ammo for it either. You can be gifted ammo for it.
Mhm.
So it's kind of a funny. There's funny little things like that the average person doesn't have any idea about.
Well, even in Minnesota, like getting a gun for your birthday, it was acceptable. Like if you wanted a rifle for deer hunting, I mean, hunting is almost like deer hunting. I shit you not, it is a holiday in Minnesota. Like I remember when I was working at a liquor store in college, like Bush Light, they gave us like these blaze orange vests with orange camo that we had to wear, and then they had a contest where if you found the camo can, you would win like Bush Light for a year.
Oh wow!
But everything was
I
like
don't know if
blazed.
that's a prize or
It
not.
was more of a punishment, I
Yeah.
think. But they would have that like when deer season was opening, like everybody would leave like the city's Friday, and they would just flock up to like their their deer camp or a plot of land or something like that, and they would stay there till Sunday. And everybody took that as a holiday. There's people that would, like half my office or half the people in like my old department, they would just take off the weekend or they would take off an extra day just to leave.
That's cool. That's cool. Have you hunted?
Yeah, so I actually got into hunting when I was up in the northern Minnesota because there's nothing really to do unless you like the outdoor stuff like skiing, snowboarding, hiking,
Igloo building,
igloo building, ice fishing, fishing.
ice fishing. Yikes.
So, and hunting, obviously. Hunting was it had some of the best places for grouse, which are like chickens. And it had some of the best places. So I had a friend. He said, "Hey, you got a shotgun? Just come out with me. You already did your hunter's education, so just ask for this, this, and this, and get this box of shells at the hardware store and come out with me." And I did, and I got a bird my first time. I was like, "Man, this is awesome! Like, it's so fulfilling." It's not necessarily about being like Jeffrey Dahmer and being like, yeah, I saw the life leave the animal's eyes, but it's a sense of fulfillment once you like prepared the bird and you like turned it into something you can eat, being like, wow, all this work that I did for this, it almost tastes better, and it gives you like a sense of satisfaction knowing you did this yourself.
So you did it. You prepared the animal that you shot and then ate it.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So,
okay.
I might not have butchered it the best, but
Right. Well, that's part of that learning process. Because if I went and shot a deer, I'm sure I could go shoot a deer, but I couldn't skin that thing. I wouldn't know really what to do, where to cut, where not to cut. So that's important info.
And that's why you have friends, because I ended up making friends with some people who deer hunted. So I would always trade them. I said, let me make you some pheasant tacos and give me some of the deer. And they were like, all right, you got yourself a deer. A deal and a deer.
Pheasant tacos. That's a first, man.
Yeah, it was actually pretty good with some queso fresco and some just some salsa.
Estás hablando mi idioma.
No sé.
You're speaking my language.
So,
that sounds pretty good.
So
queso
yeah,
fresco.
They would normally just kick me, a couple packages of deer sausages or deer steaks, and I would just do that. Or usually if you were to hit a deer like out in the middle of nowhere, I was at the one bachelor party where I had to try to keep up with a bunch of army guys. They hit a deer, and one of them just looks over to the other one, and and I'm sitting in the back freaking out like, what are we gonna do? Because his truck got totaled, and I was thinking, fuck, we're out in the middle of nowhere. Are we gonna have to walk? He just looks over. He grabs out a pistol, like a old Navy revolver, and he just says, "Well, I'm not going to let it go to waste." So he ended up just shooting it, and then he just called both of us out. He said, "All right, we're just going to gut it and dress the deer."
So they did that right there on the spot?
They ended up just getting what they could and then throwing it in the back of the truck.
And it was cold enough out to keep the meat?
Yeah, and he just first he made some cuts. He took the heart out. He just threw it to me and said, "Here, hold on to this."
And
We actually ate the heart. That was actually the best part.
Raw?
No,
Oh.
I'm not Joe Rogan.
Oh, did he do that?
I know that some of the guests you have eaten like raw organ meat.
Yeah. Yeah,
But
like
no, like Liver
probably
King.
Steve Ranella or Cameron Haynes or Adam Greentree.
I
Tho-
wouldn't be
I
surprised.
think those are the hunters that he's had on a
But,
bunch.
but we ended up bringing it back to his garage and like getting the parts that we could get, like the back strap and some of the
So the truck
steaks.
was drivable.
Yeah,
Okay, so you made it back.
but it was weird, like being out in the middle of nowhere and then just hearing like coyotes howl and the sun was going down.
Yeah, especially when you have a dead deer that's being skinned right next
Yeah.
to you. It's going to
So-
attract all kinds of stuff if they can smell it.
And the other one was like, oh, it's not a big deal. He had a revolver. I was like, all right, well, I trust you. I mean, you're in the Army.
Well, that being in the Army is not always a good precursor for trust. There's a lot of folks in the Army that you should not trust.
I learned that the second day.
Oh, no.
That was only day one of the bachelor party.
What
Day-
happened the second day?
Day two, we woke up. They went hunting. I wanted to sleep in. And then we ended up going to shoot some clays. And we finished at around 10 o'clock. And then they went to the Legion. And we drank for a long, long time. And they said, well, since it's a bachelor party, you guys can have your choice of either Rumplemints or House Tequila, or the tequila.
Rumpelmans. Isn't that a peppermint schnapps?
Yes. So
Forgot about Rumpelman.
I had to choose which would I rather drink, a really shitty tequila or Rumplemints at 10 o'clock in the
Probably
morning.
Rumpelmans would be better than a bad tequila.
Yeah, so I did that.
Yeah.
But it got progressively worse. And then I think one of the guys, he was a sober driver, so he was like, all right, we're going home. We're going to go drink more.
Typical.
And then they decided to sober up a little bit, eat, and then shoot more guns. And then, yeah, the Everclear came out.
No.
Not the legal one. The kind. There's two versions. There's like one with a lesser proof, and then the one with like it's borderline moonshine.
I had a bad experience with Everclear. And it wasn't much of an experience, really. It was my only experience with Everclear. And somebody dared me to do a shot of it. And so I was like, okay, whatever. So I did it. And then I immediately went outside and just vomited. Just kept vomiting. It was so rough. I had no idea.
Yeah. So he brought a gallon jug of the illegal, or the one that's
gallon?
illegal. Yeah.
Good Lord. You making
Yeah.
jungle juice or something?
No, he just passed it around and everybody drank it.
Wow.
And then one of the guys decided, he saw a car pull up and he decided to take a gun and like wave it in front of him. And we had to like, that was our moment to sober up and tell him, don't be an idiot.
Yeah.
And then,
That's a good way to get yourself shot.
yeah. But granted, it was like out in the middle of nowhere, but still like,
That's why it would, to me, being out in the middle of nowhere is more likely that would happen.
yeah. So they kept drinking and I knew I couldn't hang with the Army people. So I called it a night after that, and then trying to get the guy to put his gun away. And,
This
regretting
sounds so familiar. I've had so many nights that sound much like this. Just antics. People, hey, I'm the DD because I'm the young guy. I'm under 21. I can't drink yet, so I'm always the DD. And we go drive from Fort Stewart to Savannah, and we're 3 miles, 6 miles down the road, and I hear a and the three guys in the back seats have cans of beer in their laps. Oh, that's great. Oh, he's got an 18 pack down on the floor. And, on the way back, you got these guys hanging out the window, flipping people off or like yelling stuff to pretty girls in other cars that is just not stuff you should be yelling to them. And it reminds me of a lot of those fun-ish times.
yeah, that's how the bachelor party started.
Yeah.
They had a cooler. They said, all right, we're going to drink. And I said, I'm not drinking in the car.
Did you do it?
No.
No, nice. Good
No,
job.
I'm still responsible. Even though
Yeah.
I wasn't driving, it's like, and it was in the back of the country roads. It's like, I'm just going to keep it down here.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
That's how I was too. It's just like, it's not worth me getting in trouble for something so petty as this.
no, and they had no issues with it at all, but it's like, they already had a couple DUIs anyway, so it's like,
So who cares?
So what's one more going to do for them?
Right.
But yeah, I came to learn that military people can drink like a scary amount of alcohol.
Yeah. It's kind of a pastime for them. It's a hobby, a tradition, if you will. I had some pretty strong drinking days myself, a little bit during and then a couple of years after.
Oh, and I know for a God-given fact they can outdrink any fraternity. Any fraternity.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, I will say fraternity parties, those have been interesting. Like,
Were you a part of a fraternity?
no, God, no.
Have you been to a frat party?
Yeah, so when I went to school out in Boston in 2009, I had a friend and I ended up tagging along with him, and we ended up going to a frat party at MIT,
Oh, cool.
and that was definitely interesting. It was like a whole 4 or 5 story like apartment building. They had a DJ, a bartender.
Oh,
It's like I felt like I had to wear a suit and tie with how fancy it was.
nice.
Yeah,
Cool.
so and then I had some friends that were in a fraternity in Minnesota, and it was just run of the mill. Most of the time in college, though, I would hang out with the people from my gym. So I would bring them to fraternity parties, and it was, they didn't like it. So it was always interesting to see them willing to fight somebody at the drop of a hat and then trying to like be a mediator.
So were these like guys that you train martial arts with?
Yeah, so one of them, he's now a black belt.
Well, it seems like a frat party would be a really good training zone.
You think it would be. He ended up, the one party that I brought him to, he ended up shoulder checking a guy who was standing in front of the keg. The guy got mad and he ended up pushing him. And then a fight started.
Yeah.
And I had to smooth things out with the homeowners because I worked with them.
Oh, yeah. That would be not fun.
I mean, it was entertaining as shit, don't get me wrong.
And it was at this point, folks, that the recording during my editing process somehow got cut off. Cut off the last 5 minutes or so of my conversation with Alex, which was awesome. So that's pretty much it for that one. I hope you guys are enjoying the episodes. If you have any recommendations of guests or topics you'd like covered or investigated, please send any of those requests to theallcastinbox@gmail.com. And I want to give a special thanks to James Moats, Marine, who is responsible for making this podcast possible. So thank you, James, and everybody out there, take good care.